Dust motes danced lazily in the weak shafts of sunlight that pierced the gloom of the mansion, swirling in the still air like tiny ghosts. The light, filtered through grimy windows and faded curtains, cast long, melancholy shadows across the empty rooms. Every corner seemed to hold its breath as if waiting for something or someone to break the silence that had settled here for years. Each footstep echoed in the cavernous halls, a stark reminder of Mac's solitude. The sound bounced off the high ceilings and bare walls, amplifying the emptiness that filled the house. He ran a hand along the cracked, peeling wallpaper, its faded floral patterns a whisper of a vibrancy long gone. The wallpaper, once bright and full of life, now clung to the walls in tatters, a silent testament to the passage of time and the lives that had come and gone before him. Mac could almost hear the laughter and conversations that once filled these rooms, now replaced by the hollow sound of his own presence. The house, inherited from a distant relative he barely remembered, was more burden than blessing. It felt less like a home and more like a mausoleum of memories he'd never lived. Each room was a time capsule, filled with relics of a family history he only knew from faded photographs and half-remembered stories. Mac wandered through the labyrinthine corridors, each turn revealing another room shrouded in dust sheets, the furniture beneath them reduced to ghostly shapes. The silence was so complete it pressed against his ears, making him acutely aware of his own breathing, his own heartbeat. He wondered if the loneliness he felt was his own, or if it was something he had inherited along with the house, a legacy of isolation passed down through generations. The air hung heavy with the scent of decay, a musty perfume of neglect and forgotten things. Every breath tasted of old wood, dust, and memories that refused to fade. It was in this oppressive silence, broken only by the creak of floorboards beneath his feet, that he stumbled upon a door he hadn't noticed before. The door was half hidden behind a sagging bookcase, its edges outlined by a faint draft. Mac hesitated, his hand hovering over the tarnished brass handle. For a moment, he wondered what secrets the house still held, what stories remained locked away behind closed doors. As he reached out, the silence seemed to deepen, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for him to uncover what had been forgotten for so long. The door, tucked away at the end of a narrow hallway, was crafted from dark, heavy wood, its surface cool and rough to the touch. Unlike the others, this door was locked, a padlock securing it with an air of finality. Curiosity gnawed at Mac. What secrets did this room hold, hidden away from time and prying eyes? He retrieved a rusty set of bolt cutters from the basement, the metal cold and unforgiving in his grip. With a resounding snap, the lock gave way, the sound echoing through the silent house like a gunshot. The door creaked open, revealing a small, dusty room untouched by the passing years. The room was sparsely furnished, its only occupant a lone wooden desk pushed against the far wall. Shadows clung to the corners, and the air was thick with the scent of old paper and wood polish, as if time itself had slowed to a crawl within these four walls. The silence was almost oppressive, broken only by the faint creak of the floorboards beneath Mac's hesitant steps. Dust motes floated lazily in the thin shafts of light that managed to slip through the heavy curtains, illuminating the neglect that had settled over the room like a shroud. A thin layer of dust covered its surface, disturbed only by a single object, a camera. The dust was so thick that Mac could trace patterns in it with his finger, yet the area immediately around the camera was oddly clear, as if someone, or something, had recently handled it. The camera sat there, silent and unmoving, its presence commanding attention in the otherwise forgotten room. It was as if the entire space had been arranged to draw the eye directly to this one relic from another era. It was an old model, bulky and antiquated, with a long snaking cord that disappeared into the shadows. The camera's body was made of heavy metal, its edges worn smooth by years of use, and the lens was clouded with age. The cord, thick and rubbery, trailed off the desk and vanished into the darkness beneath, as if it were a lifeline to some unseen power. Mac couldn't help but wonder where it led. or if it led anywhere at all. But what chilled Mac to the bone was the red light, a tiny, malevolent eye blinking steadily. It pulsed with a rhythm that felt almost alive, casting a faint, eerie glow across the desk. The light seemed to watch him, unblinking and relentless, as if it were aware of his every move. Each blink was a silent accusation, a reminder that he was not alone in the room. The longer he stared, the more it felt as though the camera was studying him in return, cataloging his presence with cold indifference. The camera was plugged into nothing. The room appeared to be devoid of any power source. No outlets, no batteries, nothing that could explain the persistent, unnatural glow of the red light. Mac's mind raced, searching for a logical explanation, but none came. The impossibility of it all gnawed at him, making the air feel even heavier. It was as if the camera drew its energy from the very shadows that filled the room, feeding off the unease it created. Hesitantly, Mac reached out and touched the camera's cold, metallic casing. The red light continued to blink, unwavering, uncaring. The metal was icy beneath his fingertips, sending a jolt of fear up his arm. He half expected the camera to react, to whir to life or snap a photo, but it remained still, its only movement the steady pulse of its crimson eye. Mac's breath caught in his throat as he realized just how alone he truly was with this strange, unblinking sentinel. An unsettling feeling crept up his spine. This was wrong. Every instinct screamed at him to leave, to escape the gaze of the camera and the suffocating atmosphere of the room. Yet, he stood frozen, transfixed by the inexplicable, haunted by the sense that he had stumbled upon something that was never meant to be found. The unblinking eye watched on, indifferent to his fear as the room seemed to close in around him, sealing his fate with every silent, steady blink. Driven by a morbid curiosity, Mac connected the camera to his laptop. The footage was grainy, black and white, the date stamp showing the previous night. He saw himself, asleep in his bed, his chest rising and falling with each breath. But the angle was wrong. The camera was positioned above him, pointed directly down at his sleeping form, an impossible vantage point. Each night, the footage became stranger. The room itself seemed to shift, walls appearing and disappearing, furniture rearranging itself before his eyes. The mundane acts of sleep-tossing, turning, the rustling of sheets, took on a sinister quality, amplified by the grainy silence of the footage. Sleep became a torturous guessing game. What new horror would the camera reveal in the morning? He tried covering the lens, disconnecting the camera, even smashing it to pieces with a hammer. But each morning, it was back on the desk, the red light pulsing, a fresh tape waiting. His reflection in the dusty monitor screen was gaunt, his eyes bloodshot with exhaustion and fear. The house, once merely unsettling, now felt oppressive. Every shadow a potential hiding place for the camera, for whatever force was controlling it. The distortions from the footage began to bleed into his waking hours. He'd walk into a room and find it subtly different, furniture askew, paintings tilted at odd angles, mimicking the camera's warped perspective. His reflection in the hallway mirror flickered, his movements out of sync. He questioned his sanity. Was he losing his mind? Or was the camera somehow reshaping reality to match its own distorted view? The lines between the footage and his lived experience were becoming terrifyingly blurred. One night, as the clock ticked past midnight and the house was shrouded in silence, the surveillance footage captured something that defied explanation. The old bedroom, usually so still and empty, seemed to hold its breath as the camera's grainy lens revealed a presence that had never been there before. In the farthest corner of the room, where the shadows gathered thickest, a figure appeared. It was little more than a dark silhouette, its outline blurred and shifting, almost as if it was struggling to remain hidden from the camera's unblinking eye. The poor video quality only made it more unsettling, as if the darkness itself was conspiring to keep its secrets. Yet even through the static and distortion he could make out a shape, vaguely humanoid, impossibly still. What truly froze his blood was the suggestion of a smile, It wasn't a friendly smile but a wide, unnatural grin that seemed to stretch too far, curving up at the edges in a way that no human mouth ever could. The face was only partially visible, but the grin was unmistakable, glowing faintly in the gloom. He stared at the footage, heart pounding, and realized with growing horror that the figure was moving. Barely, but enough. Its chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. He was certain of it. The movement was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there, a sign of life, or something like it, lurking in the darkness. The old tape hissed and crackled, filling the room with a low, eerie static. Yet beneath the noise, he thought he could almost hear the breathing. Shallow, raspy, and unnatural. It was as if the figure's presence was bleeding through the tape, reaching out from the past to haunt him in the present. That night, fear gripped him so tightly he couldn't move. He lay in bed, eyes wide open, staring into the darkness, afraid to blink, afraid to look away. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that smile, that impossible grin, waiting for him in the shadows. The house, usually a place of comfort, became a prison of creaks and whispers. Every groan of the old floorboards, every gust of wind rattling the window pane, sent a fresh wave of terror through him. He listened for footsteps, for the sound of breathing that wasn't his own, convinced that at any moment, the smiling figure would step out from the corner and into the light. But when the first rays of morning sunlight crept into the room, everything was as it had always been. The shadows had retreated, the figure was gone, and the room looked disturbingly normal, almost as if nothing had happened at all. Yet the memory of that smile lingered, haunting him long after the sun had risen. The next night's footage showed him, wide awake, staring at the camera in terror. It was a perfect loop. He was living out the events he had witnessed just hours earlier. Fear gave way to a chilling realization. The camera wasn't recording the past, it was predicting, or perhaps dictating, the future. This was no mere surveillance device. It was something far more insidious, something that had woven itself into the fabric of his life, manipulating his actions, blurring the lines between observer and observed. He was trapped in a macabre performance, his every move scripted by an unseen hand. The realization was a breaking point. He stopped eating, stopped sleeping, his life consumed by the chilling images on the tapes. He watched himself unravel, a prisoner in his own life, his every move anticipated, his every fear realized. Then one morning, he saw it. On the tape, he was watching the footage, just as he always did. But this version of him wasn't afraid. He was smiling, a chilling, empty smile, his eyes fixed on the camera, never blinking. The red light on the camera blinked back, a silent acknowledgement. The watcher was being watched.